Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. This episode is sponsored by Police Mortgage. Police Mortgage is a full-service mortgage company dedicated to serving police officers and first responders. Founded in 2008, Police Mortgage offers a variety of mortgage products tailored to meet the needs of those who serve and protect. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none. I am Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and I have a treat this morning. I am bringing back one of my favorite guests, and her name is Lori Morrison. You may remember her from The Unlovely Truth back in the day. You may remember her as being this high-end, great private investigator, but we know her today as the author and the host of Shielded, both a book and a podcast, which we're going to dig into. Lori, welcome back.
It's always great to be here with you, Ken. Thanks for asking me.
Not as great as it is for me to actually talk to a Lori Morrison. As I say, it's always a good day when you get to talk to a Lori Morrison.
Oh, you're so kind.
So let's talk about Shielded. It's a book turning into a podcast, which are weekly devotions for those who stand guard at church. A really nice niche. Tell us a little bit about Shielded, both the book and why the podcast.
Well, it started out as just my way of serving my fellow security team personnel. So, we're out there doing our thing, and it occurred to me that we needed to be poured into because we were pouring so much out. So honestly, it just started, I was putting them out once a week in our little group chat, just to encourage everybody how important the work was, how valuable they are just for who they are, not what they're accomplishing. And I thought, well, shoot, as long as I'm putting these out there, I'm going to have 52 sooner or later. I get ahead of the curve a little bit and I can put a devotion out there, because it really is, like you said, it's a unique little niche. And hopefully we've all got that friend that when you share things with them, they say, hey, I get you. And so this is a group that not everybody gets if you haven't been a part of it or in something similar, like law enforcement and other first responders. So that's how the book came to be. And then you and I have stayed in touch over the years because it's just great to always talk with you and work with you. And when you mentioned this podcast network really being something that was an extra arm of support for first responders, you and I chatted about it. And I said, well, we do have a lot of current and former law enforcement that step into church security operations. So maybe this could be a fit. Maybe we can reach a little bit wider audience and just let them know you're seen, you're known, you're important, and we want to support you.
Yeah. You gave me the pleasure of, in essence, seeing one of the first drafts before the book was even published. And, while I certainly have faith, I am not the most religious and deep guy that's out there. Maybe a discussion for another day. But yeah, in reading it, a couple of things that really popped into my head. One was back in the day when I actually did go to church. The one of the few things that I actually really sincerely enjoyed was you'd have a pastor that would read from the Bible, and he would go, and it's Catholic Church, so it was always he, sorry. But he would go and kind of dig into what does this mean today? And, 9 times out of 10, when you had a good pastor, sometimes, you'd have an idiot, but
Sure.
that's, again, also another story. But when you'd have a good pastor that would have some insight, he would talk about what's happening today and how this applies. And that's one of the things that I really picked up from your book. And the second thing was that, yeah, as I was reading it, it's like I know so many first responders, especially police officers, that struggle in this job with so many people that hate them and want to spit on them and so forth. And as so many of our colleagues, like a Randy Sutton and so many others that I could probably rail off, talk about, remember why you started, remember the quest, remember the mission. This really helps first responders to get back to, this is why I got into this, and this scripture and this explanation of it today really helps me to embrace why this is still important.
Well, I'm glad that you picked up on those two things because they really were my prime motivations. I like practicality. I don't want just fluff spoken at me. I want to say, okay, how does this change the way I live? And on the second hand, like you were saying, just being able to provide something that at some moment in time might resonate with somebody and say, oh, yeah, this is why I do this. And it is important. And my services are worthwhile and valued.
Yeah.
So I really wanted people to take both of those things away.
Yeah, yeah. Whether you're standing guard at your favorite church or about to get into a squad car, there's a saying, there's a reading, there's something in the book, and will be in the podcast for just about everybody. Now, do you chastise people for moving ahead, like to maybe week 26, because they really like that reading and they've tabbed it and they've listened and they read that every day for motivation, or do you slap them and say, no, you can't get to 26 yet, you're on number 3?
No, they can read it in whatever order they want because again, it's meant to be a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so however it is serving them in the moment, that's what I want them to do with it. So read it backwards, read it forwards, read the odds first and then the evens. It doesn't matter to me.
And now a word from our sponsor, Police Mortgage.
As a first responder, control matters on the job and at home. When it comes to buying or refinancing a house, Police Mortgage works specifically with first responders who want clear options, real guidance, and competitive rates. No confusion, no pressure, just experts who understand your world. Learn more at policemortgage.com or call 312-499-8878. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none.
And learn more about Police Mortgage from their podcast, The Mortgage Beat, another podcast in the National Police Podcast Network.
As part of the National Police Podcast Network, we want the podcast to obviously, in a way, be an accompaniment to the book. I
Mhm.
found, little story back in the day. I was, and still am, a big fan of Stephen Covey's works, the Seven
Mhm.
Habits and all that. And one of the things that I would do when I was a manager is I would have the book and I would have all kinds of notes and things on it, but I would also have the audio book on CD that I would listen to in the car, especially when I was on long business trips. And I found that I would pick up different things from the book that I would from the audio.
Yeah.
And I think that you may, even though it's going to be very, very similar, I think that you're using the book as a guide. I don't think you're changing too much language in it. Maybe you could talk to that a little bit. But I think that sometimes you pick up something a little bit different from the audio than you would from the written word. Not good or bad or indifferent,
Sure.
just simply a different way of kind of consuming the information.
Oh, 100%. Because we all have different rhythms of our life. Maybe you don't have time to sit down and read, but like you said, you've got a commute, you've got a trip, so you can take in some content that way. And, our brains work differently. Sometimes things will click with you when you hear them versus when you read them. Or sometimes it's just a matter of this spoke to me in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I get things, I reread scripture passages, and I'm like, okay, well, I know that was there the last time I read it, but somehow I didn't notice it. And so I'm hoping that these are resources that people will return to and say, okay, I maybe wasn't struggling with this when I first heard that, but I think that can speak to me now.
Hmm.
and they're short. Again, I
Mm-hmm.
know people are super busy, and so I wanted it again to be practical. It's easy to consume. It's easy to go back to if you need to. It's easy to jump in and out of order if you want to. Just however it serves people, that's the way I would love to see them use it, share it, and repeat it.
Yeah, exactly. This, whether it's the podcast or the book,
Mhm.
it's not a huge commitment. It's not War and Peace that you got to block out a day.
My goodness.
Whether it's to listen to one episode or read, one weekly devotional, even if you did both, it would probably take a whole 15 minutes out of your life. And,
Exactly.
and 15 minutes that is well worth it. I mean, especially for, I think, of those first responders out there, many of which are helping out at churches for the security. That's one more thing they have to do. I know that they're passionate about it, but if they've got like 5 kids and the job and the
Mhm.
church and everything else, sometimes it's hard to find an hour for yourself, but finding like 10, 15 minutes for yourself
Right.
is usually doable.
No, I agree 100%. And the last thing I want is for anybody to look at this as, oh, that's one more thing I have to do. I want it to be, hey, I think this can be a resource that I will benefit from. That's what I want it to be. And use it one week and then don't use it the next.
Right.
I, Again, it's just whatever is serving you in the moment. This is just here to come alongside you and again remind you that you're valuable just because of who you are, not because of what you do. And that even though most people don't understand, don't see, don't really get what all goes into what you're doing, here's a place where you can go where people get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you get it, which kind of leads me to a question, especially because I'm always somewhat amazed and envious of people that have more faith than I do, and you're one of those people. Um, as you go through this, and to preface it, us folks that have either written a book, like we both have, or done a podcast, which we both have, part of the reason we do it is we want to learn something. We want to
Yeah.
learn something from other people. We want to learn something about ourselves, whatever it is. As you went through this exercise in writing the devotionals, eventually making it into a book, eventually making it into a podcast, was there anything that you learned, anything that surprised you, or anything you're like, I haven't thought of that in 20 years, or at least in this way? And it's like, wow,
Mm.
yeah, you know what? That's something I really need right now, or something that's really interesting.
Yeah, for me, it was a big reminder of the need to slow down and take care of myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think anybody who is any type of first responder who does security in churches or anywhere else, we're constantly taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
That's our nature. And we live in a very performative society. We're based on our stats, our numbers. And sometimes, I won't even say sometimes, that has really creeped into the church, unfortunately. And so I wanted this to remind others, as it reminded me, that it's not about, how many mass shootings did you stop?
Yeah.
Um, it's about, did you make people feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
Is your presence comforting? We don't want to be where we have snipers up on the roof pointing toward the parking lot as people are coming in. I hope we never get to that point.
Me
But
too.
when we do have people maybe at the front door with the greeters, and it reminds people, hey, they're looking out for me here. I can relax. I can recharge. I can worship. I don't have to be on my guard all the time. And so reminding myself, I need that time too. I
Mm-hmm.
need that space as well. Because, the saying, you can't pour from an empty vessel. So I want everybody out there that is pouring and pouring and pouring to remember to pour into themselves. And I hope this can be a part of how they do that.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's very similar to an analogy I use. Yours is much more eloquent and nicer, but yeah, the analogy that I use is a common one that a lot of consultants use or speakers, which is the airplane analogy, where they go through, they teach you how to put on your seatbelt even though you already have the thing on. Um, and they say, if we lose cabin pressure, this really stylish mask is going to drop down from the top of the plane. And they make a very special point for you to put on your mask first before you help
Mhm.
anybody else. Because if you don't have your mask on, you're going to pass out. You're not going to have the
Right.
capacity to assist anybody, including
Mhm.
yourself. So, yeah, I think that's an
100%.
yeah, it's an extremely important point. And as you were speaking about what this kind of felt to you and what it reminded you of, I was thinking of a recent police luncheon where they were giving out some awards here in Long Beach, California. And one of the award winners, who was very deserving, has served for a long time in the Long Beach Police Department, talked about, one of the first years in his career where he was doing really well, but, he felt that the job was changing him. And
Mhm.
he talked about how literally he drove around the block. He was going home. He drove around the block like 8, 9, 12 times before he finally pulled in the driveway. And my paraphrasing of his words is he was trying to get himself right.
Mhm.
He didn't feel right, and he didn't want to walk into his home not feeling in a way that could serve his family.
Yeah.
And I think of something like Shielded, the book and or the podcast, is maybe if this gentleman had that tool, maybe taking that 10 to 15 minutes that we talked about, maybe there was one. I had hard to believe that there wouldn't be at least one, probably many in a book like that he could read, he could listen to and say, all right, you know what? I get it. I've kind of recentered, I could do my most important job, which is taking care of my family, and I'm in a better space.
I hope so. That's such a beautiful thought. It's heartbreaking that jobs can bring us to that point.
Mm.
And I get it because, like you said when you introduced me, I'm a retired private investigator, so I've seen a lot of stuff I wish I hadn't. I know a lot of stuff I wish I didn't. Um, and so for me, it's, kind of guarding myself between being, I hate to say overly concerned, but bordering on paranoid a little bit.
Yeah,
And but then you have the other extreme, especially security in churches, where everybody thinks that everybody's wonderful and wouldn't hurt anybody, and what's the big deal? And knowing different,
yeah,
that can be tough. But and I don't mean to take security and like raise it above other ministries,
sure.
because each one is extremely valuable to the body. But it is different as far as mindset goes. You're talking about people who have stepped up and said, I'm willing to go toward the danger instead of away from it. I'm willing to train and learn about things that nobody should have to know about because that gets me ready to do what I need to do.
Hmm.
And so there's, so many great devotions out there, but I really wanted one that captured the heart of, we think just a little bit differently. We see things just a little bit differently. And so I wanted to address that, and I hope that I did.
Well, from what I read and heard so far, you definitely did. Yeah, interesting question, and then we'll begin to wrap up a little bit because you got more important things to do. You probably have five more book, Shielded 2, Shielded 3. But you spent a lot of time as a private investigator, and I'm sure you've seen and heard things that were not pleasant, that we won't get into. But you're also a person of very deep faith. Yeah, did you ever have moments where you saw or heard something and it made you cynical, or it made you, you know what, maybe what I believe just, isn't true, or deepen your faith? Do you ever have like one of those days where you're like, this everything is just screwed up?
Oh, yeah, all of the above. There were times when I just thought, why could this even be a thing? But it also, it drove me back to scripture
Mm,
to say, okay, I see it. I know it's a thing. How do I reconcile this with my faith? And I think for me, where I landed is way back in Genesis, at the
mm,
fall. The name of the tree that they ate from was the knowledge of good and evil.
mm,
And so I think it's very helpful for us to all remind ourselves that each of us has that knowledge and has that capability. Some of us choose to feed the good side, and so it grows and the other withers. But some of us balance the scales in the other direction, or unbalance it, excuse me, in the other direction. And so just knowing that the things that I'm seeing, if I don't continue to anchor myself, I could go that direction so easily.
mhm.
And so I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be human if I didn't
Yeah.
doubt sometimes, but being able to say, God, I know you can take my doubts. You're so much bigger than any of them. So I can throw them your way, and you'll help me.
Now, it makes a lot of sense. One back in the day, I went through a whole, Catholic upbringing, and I remember, when we actually had a good teacher, they would talk about the idea that the whole essence of faith is doubt. That if you just blindly accepted it, you probably really didn't have faith, because the whole part of a definition of faith is not knowing for sure, but still believing. And so there's always some modicum of doubt. And also what you were saying kind of reminded me of something that somebody else had mentioned on this show a couple weeks ago. And I can't remember exactly who it was, otherwise I would give him credit. I think it might have been oh, Dr. Tilly. But yeah, guests that we had in recent days that talked about psychology and how somebody grew up in a negative environment, and how many times being a cop or a criminal is the same coin, it's just a different side. That sometimes, to your words, sometimes they have a negative experience growing up and in their adolescence, and they eat from the good side of the tree, and they become a police officer, detective, to try and fight the type of thing that's happened. And others just go deeper into the evil side of the tree and continue that cycle and on that criminal path. So I think what you say is actually very spot on.
Well, thank you. And anybody out there that's a grandma knows, you threaten my grandkids, my good side is going to be severely tested.
I'm gonna remember that gun training from my private investigator days. I bet you were a pretty good shot. But no comment.
No comment.
But as we begin to wrap up, I also want to hear about and let our audience in on, you're doing a little bit of rebranding. We've kind of went from the unlovely truth, and I think you have a new website and new
Yes.
branding under She Shepherds. Talk a little bit about that before we let you go.
Yeah, I realized as I was talking about church safety and security, I had a little bit different spin to things. Physical safety is, of course, paramount, but we can't stop there. We need to make sure that we are also providing emotional and spiritual safety as well. And that was just something that men in leadership were having a hard time resonating with for whatever reason. And so I shifted my focus to speaking to women and just helping them understand that, whether you have the title of a leader or not, Ken Blanchard, who wrote Lead Like Jesus, said, authority isn't true leadership, it's influence. And so we're all influential. We all have people that come to us for certain things that they see a strength in us. And so just working with women to say, you can step into that role of influencing people as fully as God has prepared you for. And part of that can be speaking up, having conversations with other leaders, and not being adversarial about it. I don't think it needs to be like that, but saying, there are win-wins to some things that we can change. And let's figure out what that looks like here at our church, because every church is going to have a different appetite for what kind of changes they're willing to make, the extent they're willing to go. And we all have different resources, whether that's money or volunteers or the way our space is configured, what we're actually able to do. And so just being able to pour into women and say, again, it's back to a lot of times in churches, in families, in whatever, it's the women that are constantly pouring, and they forget to fill themselves. So, showing them why that's important, how you're actually serving others as you're preparing yourself, you're getting ready for that, and then giving them frameworks for how to have successful conversations. And because I can be a little sassy, I also focus.
I never picked up on that over the years, that you ever had a sassy side, Lori.
I also focus, especially on TikTok, She Shepherds _ if you like a little sassiness, calling out toxic church practices and saying, look, this is stuff we've put up with forever. I don't know why, but it's time to stop. So just bringing that awareness, bringing that idea of it is okay to talk about this. And what I've learned, what's really, to me, I'm grateful for them sharing their stories, but it's a little bit sad. The people that are sharing the most with me are people who've walked away. This is what happened to me, and this is why I'll never go back. And I always try to honor, that should never have happened to you. Regardless of the circumstances of it, it should never have been handled the way it was handled. And, I hope that you're able to find community somewhere that will lift you up. And, because that's not the time for deep theological anything. That's the time to say, we hurt you. You shouldn't have been hurt. And I hope you're able to go on and rise above that.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and I'm really, really pleased that you're having those conversations.
Thank you. It's been an eye-opener for me. And again, I'm so grateful for all the people who are willing to share.
Yeah, well, you're sharing a lot, not only through She Shepherds, but also through Shielded, both the book and the podcast. As the people read the book and listen to the podcast, is there a takeaway? Is there something that you want them to feel or take away from your work?
I want them to feel how valued they are and how valuable they are.
Awesome. Well, Lori, you're very valuable to us. Shielded is part of the National Police Podcast Network. You could find it on nppn.live and all of your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple and so on and so forth. There's probably 27 of them out there that I'm not mentioning. But before I close, for those folks out there that want to connect with Lori Morrison, maybe have you speak, maybe have you come out to their women's group or something of that nature, how best can they find a Lori Morrison out there?
Easiest way is just to shoot me an email at Lori, Lori, at sheshepherds.org.
Awesome. Lori, always great to talk to you. I'm so
Yes.
excited to be a very small part of this great project and Shielded that you're doing. And so pleased that you spent some time with us today.
Yes, it was great. Always great to talk to you and the amazing work that you do and that the National Police Podcast Network is going to be doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who have either watched or listened to this episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we'll be back with you next week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by Bader Training and Consulting. Public Safety Talk Radio is also proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. The National Police Podcast Network is a dedicated media network powered by the National Police Federal Credit Union, developed in partnership with experienced podcast professionals and public safety advocates. Learn more about the National Police Federal Credit Union at nationalpolicefcu.com.